welcome to another episode of Kari in the Kitchen. I'm Kari Arnger and I'm the winemaker for Cornerstone Cellars here in Napa. I'm here with my husband Jeff.
Hey!
Hi Jeff.
Nice to see you.
And it's Cinco de Mayo. Woo!
It is! Happy Cinco de Mayo!
So, as we've promised in a couple of earlier episodes,
so we're making nachos.
We're going to make a nachos and a burrito and some tacos.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And they're wine friendly.
Yeah, and oh, we're going to make margaritas too?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, what we're doing is we're doing our third contest winner. We had a recipe contest. We put it out for everybody to send us recipes. Lots of you did. We still are probably going to make a few more of those down the road, but our three winners, we did.
They're still coming in.
We did Kim McGinnis and her wild mushroom lasagna.
Yes.
And then
grand prize winner.
And then last week we did these wonderful lamb lollipops with black garlic.
Wow.
Which were delicious.
Ron, I'm still in awe of that dish.
Yeah.
So good. We had such a nice meal.
Yeah. So Ron Benny, that was his recipe. And then today we're doing Mary Beth Shannon's recipe, wine party paella.
Yeah. I love her on Saturday Night Live.
She was great. I bet she's never heard that.
I bet she hasn't.
So we're going to make the paella for you today. We've got two wines I think are going to go really well.
Cheers.
With this one is the 2019 Cornerstone Cellars Sauvignon Blanc from the Farina Vineyard on Sonoma Mountain.
Ah.
Refreshing on a nice warm summer day. The second wine that we're going to be tasting is the Rosé Pinot Noir, the Coralina Rosé.
One of my favorites.
One of my favorites as well.
Cheers, honey.
So I think that's going to be a nice pair with this as well. So let's jump right in. I hear a little sizzling going on.
Yes, we have the sizzling. We've done a few steps thus far because we couldn't do the whole recipe here. So a little bit of prep. You have to chop some onions and things and garlic, and then you have to peel some shrimp, and you have to have everything ready to go. You slice your sausages up into chunks. You brown them to begin with. Then you take them out of the pan and leave all the nice oil that the chorizo has given the flavor to. Then you saute some calamari, basically squid and both the tails of the body and the tentacles.
And the tentacles. The tentacles are my favorite part.
Yes. You have some peeled shrimp and such. But then you get to this point where you have your chopped onions, your red peppers, and your garlic all sauteed. And this is where the magic happens. Then you start to assemble the paella.
So we are going to put this recipe up on the website so everyone can have actually all the recipes. We're getting ready to launch a new website and it will have the recipes on it. But let me just go back because I always thought that paella was very difficult to make and I never used to make it. So we've got this great recipe and I just want to walk through it just a little bit because having now done this a couple of times, it's really quite easy. There's a little work.
I ate it in restaurants. I ate it at a friend's house, but I never made it either because I thought, well, I just probably don't know how to do this.
So first, what we did is we browned the chorizo.
Yes.
So that's you did, and so here it is. We did it in slices, and so 2/3 of that will go in. So and then we did the squid rings, which you talked about. Then we did the garlic, onion, and red bell pepper, and there we are.
That's where we are so far.
All right, great. So the next step would be to add the rice.
That is what we do next.
Yep, and we've got 2 cups of paella rice, and you can't always find that, but the arborio rice we have, which we've been using, works great. So you're just pouring 2 cups of that right into the pan, and you're going to give that a little stir, mix that up a little bit.
Yep.
I'm going to go get you some white wine. Wait a minute, hold on, I'll be right back.
Oh yeah, we need, 2 cups?
2 cups.
A cup.
I'm back. And so we recommend using the wine that you're cooking with and drinking. So both, instead of having a separate wine for this.
We can use that, right?
I know.
Perfect.
Well, we're going to get white wine, 1 cup.
Here you go.
So, Sauvignon Blanc from the Farina Vineyard. There's a cup.
And I'm going to turn this heat up.
In Sonoma Mountain.
Because we want this to start heating up.
Okay, but we started at a medium heat.
Yes.
Right?
Now I turned it down to a simmer to get the show started, but now we're going to turn it up to heat.
So now you're going to cook that until the wine starts to get absorbed.
That's right. And when I first read that, I thought, wow, it takes a long time then, because if you cook rice, it doesn't take, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes for the liquid to absorb it. All you're trying to do is get it to absorb 1 cup of the wine. So this is pretty quick. And this takes 2 or 3 minutes, but we're going to jump ahead, I think.
A little bit. Well, I'm going to talk about the wines real quick.
Okay.
And then the next step before we put the next step in, which is the chicken broth.
Mm-hmm.
There, we're going to do put a little saffron in there
So
too.
you're spicing up the broth.
We're going to spice it up a little bit. So Sauvignon Blanc. This is our 2019 vintage. Comes out of the Coralina vineyard. Sonoma Mountain, not at high elevation, we're only about 400 or 500 feet. We're sort of at the foothills of Sonoma Mountain in Sonoma, but it's a really beautiful place to grow Sauvignon Blanc. It's meticulously farmed. It's actually growing like a weed right now. The canes are up to the second wire, and we're looking at tiny little baby clusters already, which is really great. But this will get picked in the middle of the night and brought into the winery. It usually arrives at the winery about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and we put it right into the press. And so we'll press the juice right off the skins.
And it comes out really tasty.
And it comes out pretty tasty. It's such a great vineyard. But what I love about this wine is we ferment in a couple of different vessels. I'm using a concrete egg to ferment in, which really is an egg-shaped concrete vessel. Holds about 4 barrels of wine, about 240 gallons. I'm using.
It's magical.
It is magical, and if I could explain it, I'd be rich right now. And then we're using some acacia wood coming from France. Instead of using French oak, we're using acacia wood. I use one new barrel a year, and the rest is the 1 year, 2, 3, 4-year-old barrels. And then a little bit of stainless steel, the small stainless steel barrels. And one of the things I love about this wine is it has bright acidity. It's got the nice tropical fruit, but there's also a creaminess in the middle, and it's not from being in oak barrels. It's a creaminess because during the course of fermentation and aging, I'm stirring the lees in each of those barrels about once a week, and that keeps those lees suspended, and it leaves a little bit of creaminess there. And then the egg, I don't actually have to stir because the shape pushes the wine up from the bottom, and so those lees stay suspended, so it actually alleviates some of my work. I don't have to go in and stir the egg stirs itself.
That's why it's magical.
That's why it's magical. And then about a month before we're going to bottle, we get it out of the egg in the other containers, put the blend together, and let it settle out and clarify. And so it's almost as clear once we've done that and racked it off those lees. And then it gets ready for bottling. So it takes about a month. We do cold stabilization. It takes a little preparation to put that in the bottle. But then you end up with this beautiful wine that's tart.
And honey, in that amount of time that you explained this first wine, the wine has been absorbed by the rice, and we are ready for the next step.
All right, so then the next step is we're going to
You're going to do your magic with the broth.
I know, well this is cool. So saffron, you've heard about it, we all talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I went, well, I'm going to go get some more saffron. And then it is precious. So it comes in this tiny little container, and it's just little threads of spice. But they're very, very potent. So this recipe specifically calls for 4 or 5 threads. So there's 3. I'm going to throw it right into the broth. And here's 2 more. And they're just so tiny, but very aromatic.
Very, and if you use too much, it can be very bitter.
Yeah.
And people always talk about saffron and think, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. And that little container is $9, but you're using like $1 worth of it, maybe. 2. And that's it. And it's enough for a giant pan of paella for 8 or 10 people. So it is pricey, but it goes a long way.
So we could have a party with this.
Yeah.
A party paella.
Absolutely.
Because in a pan this size, and the recipe here, we figured, now we've tested it a couple times, this should feed about 8 or 10.
Yep.
Depending, you're going to maybe throw a salad in there, and you're going to maybe have a little crunchy bread or something like that.
Whatever you want to have with it, it sure is good. But I mean, this is a 20-inch paella pan we're using, and it feeds 8 or 10 people easily. And so this recipe will go a long way. And this is ready for your...
All right, well, you're ready. There's
this is the chicken
that's
broth?
4 cups. That's 4 cups of chicken broth.
And
the saffron.
And the saffron.
And that's what's in there. And you can make your chicken broth from scratch if you want to do that. Take the chicken carcasses and bones and simmer those off, but you can also buy it in the store. So
just make sure you get all the threads out of the chicken broth. It doesn't stick into your
you want to make this.
Because if you only have 5 or 6 in there, if you miss 2, you're losing a lot.
Yeah. And so now we're just going to stir that for a bit.
Yep, I'm gonna turn the heat
Okay.
back up, because we were starting to get dry.
Yeah. That actually absorbed right away. It was really fast. I thought paella takes a long, long time.
No, but the wine absorbs into
Right away.
the very dry rice very quickly.
Okay.
I would say that was a 3 or 4 minute talk you gave, and that was it.
Just like in the recipe. The recipe's great. We've tried this recipe a couple of times just to make sure that it works, and it works every time.
We made it once extra because we like eating it.
Well, yes, that's true too. And I'll say here too, I'm going to talk about the rosé real quickly.
So we're just stirring this and then just waiting for it to start to absorb.
Waiting for it to start to absorb, and the rice will start to absorb that moisture and that flavor. But as going through this recipe, the paella traditionally has seafood in it. There's usually some shrimp in there, or you can put in mussels, clams, you know, whatever you want to put in seafood-wise. We're putting in calamari, but you could make this without seafood.
Yeah.
You could just do it with sausage or meat, or you could do it with a lot of chicken. Well, we are gonna throw some chicken.
I've seen all sorts of different meats in here. I've even seen steak put in here. I've seen ground beef put in there.
Ground beef makes sense because sausage goes in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that will change a little bit your wine pairing. So for us, with this recipe, with the shrimp in it and the calamari, we thought for sure the Sauvignon Blanc, which turns out is true, and the rosé of Pinot Noir. So to make this more of a red wine friendly recipe, you probably want to cut back on the seafood and put some more meat, like items in there, mushrooms. Mushrooms would be great.
Mushrooms would be a great bridge ingredient, and you can also deglaze the pan with red wine, and that'll just bring up some more red wine flavors.
For me personally, I just like to make the recipe exactly as it is, and then on the next time around, kind of fool with it.
Well, this recipe was a winner, so we
really
figured
was.
don't mess with it.
Don't mess with it. So the second wine that we're going to try is the Coralina Rosé of Pinot Noir. This is coming from Sonoma County, the Petaluma Gap region. Beautiful grapes. We probably could have made red wine out of it, but you know, we're making rosé out of it. We farm it as if we're making rosé. It isn't just a bleed, isn't Sanier method from making a red wine. We went into the vineyard and we picked it a little earlier than you would pick a grape for red wine. So the acidity is a little brighter and the sugars are a little lower. It's not quite as ripe, so you get less alcohol, and it makes this beautiful light colored rosé. And this also gets picked in the middle of the night. It goes into the winery 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Goes into the press.
I'll drink to that.
And I'm going to drink to that.
I often drink till 3 or 4 in the morning. Oh no.
Goes into the press, and this vintage, and it changes vintage to vintage. This vintage, the juice and the grapes skin stay together for about an hour and 15 minutes or so.
Oh, that's delicious.
Isn't that? I know. I know. If I do say so myself.
They're like, you know, cousins. Like the Sauvignon Blanc is nice and crisp and rich. I mean, crisp and lean. And then the rosé, it just has this richness.
There's a richness to it.
So either one will go very well with this dish.
But with this wine as well, it goes. I ferment in small stainless steel barrels, a little bit of neutral French oak. And I do stir the lees on this wine as well. That gives it that little bit of body in the middle. There's a little richness and roundness. It still has the bright acidity that makes it a great pairing with food. But also, I think on the porch on a sunny afternoon, it works perfectly. So I love that it also is very, very food friendly.
One thing I learned in researching this dish and making it a few times is that you don't have to worry about the stuff sticking to the bottom. You want to keep it loose on the bottom a little bit, but at the end, one of the delicacies, especially in Spain and in Valencia, where this is from, and I've learned this from a couple of Spanish chefs that were visiting the Culinary Institute. They said, oh no, we always try to get in the back of the line so people get the paella first, because they like the stuff that's burnt on the bottom of the pan. That's considered the good stuff. And they call it socarrat. And the socarrat is beautiful because it has the caramelized sugars of the rice plus all the flavors of the paella. It's very good.
It is. It's great.
So you can burn a little bit of this in the bottom.
So the next thing that we'll do is we're going to add 2/3 of the cooked chorizo.
Okay.
And that is this, and I did sample one earlier, and it is delicious.
So two-thirds minus 1.
About 2/3, yeah. We're gonna set about 1/3 of that aside, just so we can put it in at the end, so, sort of like a garnish.
Okay, here's a third.
Yeah, and then the tomatoes go in. So what we have here, and we have it right in the can, 14-ounce can of diced tomatoes.
Organic sliced diced tomatoes.
Yeah. And they don't have to be organic, but when you can, why wouldn't you?
And we just made it simpler for ourselves. We could have taken fresh tomatoes and taken the skins off and all that stuff, but we could have gotten whole tomatoes in a can and had to chop them, but hey, they did the work for us.
Yep, they did, which I appreciate. So now, according to the recipe, and this is because now we're obviously doing this live, the recipe would now tell you, put it in an oven that's been preheated at, what do we do, 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. So the rest of the rice will get absorbed, the flavors start to melt a little bit.
This was where it was fun when we did it because we thought, oh, well, that's going to take a long time to absorb, but literally it was about 15-20 minutes and the rice was fully fluffed and it's beautiful.
Perfectly.
So this is when we would just take it off the stove and you just put it into the oven and you're done until it comes out in 20 minutes and then you add the other ingredients. So let's just pretend.
Or let's just say that went in the oven and it's been 20 minutes and now it's back out again.
Let me check. No, it's
not
not in there.
Not in there. Well, look, it's right here.
Oh, here it is.
So we've been in it 20 minutes, the rice is puffed up, it looks beautiful. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in our shredded chicken.
There you are.
So there's a couple of ways
Which is
to make
already cooked.
it's cooked and shredded. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can do that on the stove. What I like to do is sear it first, then poach it, boil it, put it in water and do that. The other way to do that is you can put a sear on it and then you can bake it in the oven. You want it tender and juicy but not dried out.
That was the way we did it the first time.
That's the way we did it the first time.
We did use thighs because that's our favorite cut.
We like thighs. So today, I'll tell you what I did. I went out and bought a pre-roasted chicken. And they're roasted to perfection. They're delicious.
And that was even easier.
It was actually even easier. So we've also done that as well.
Well, that cuts 10 or 15 minutes out of your prep time.
It does. Okay, so
the
then,
chicken's in there.
Then it says we add the reserved chorizo, the sausage we put aside.
Okay.
The prawns.
The reserve, the rest of the chorizo?
Put the rest of the chorizo in.
Oh.
See, remember we...
Saved the third.
That's it, right. That's exactly right.
Garnishing with it.
No,
Okay, cool.
no. And then the mussels, the prawns and the mussels.
And what about the calamari, the squid?
Same thing. Let's see. Well, what do we say? Squid. I'm reading my recipe. Yes, and squid. That all goes in.
There we go. Squid.
Which you pre-cooked.
And this is after the rice has been cooked.
Right.
But squid is pre-cooked.
It was pre-cooked, but not completely cooked, as you know.
Not rubbery. Then you want shrimp.
And then you throw the shrimp on there.
And what was the other thing? Mussels?
Mussels.
Where are the mussels?
And then it goes...
Are they in the fridge?
Oh, they're in the refrigerator. Got them.
We're being safe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got them on ice, baby. Ice, baby.
Nice cold mussels.
About a dozen mussels. If any of them are open already, when you get them and you find that they're open, toss those aside.
Yep.
You want closed mussels.
That's
they look
correct.
good?
These are all tight-lipped.
Excellent.
As opposed to green.
I did have those green mussels in New Zealand, and that is a whole other story. So now that just goes back into the oven for 8 to 10 minutes till the prawns are opaque and the mussels are open.
Okay, we're going to turn
That
this
is a
off.
beautiful dish. Yes.
It's gorgeous. It's basically a protein stew. It's just amazing.
It is. And I've seen it made other ways. I have seen it made, we've gone to parties and events and we've seen paella made on an open plancha. It's got a fire burning under it. It never goes into the oven, right? It's just done in an open
Absolutely.
fire.
And you can do it just like that on the stove, but the oven is part of this recipe and it works quite well.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Let me pull out our finished product.
As if 8 or 10 minutes have elapsed, here comes the finished product. So I can't wait to try this. We've been smelling this, for
Not only has it elapsed, but it was plated.
Oh, look at that. That's gorgeous.
That's warm.
Yeah. Yeah, hold it up a little bit. You can see all the mussels open.
Hold on.
Oh, that smells wonderful.
You don't want me to put this into the oven?
No,
That's fine.
you're gonna leave that right there.
Okay.
We can finish that on the stove too. We can finish it in the oven or on the
Absolutely.
stove, either way.
And the stove, you get a little bit more soakerette, so that'll be
Yeah,
fun.
you do.
So there is your finished dish. It's a beautiful pile of rice
Mustard
and
mussels.
all sorts of different proteins, including the mussels have opened. There's sausage, there is chicken, there is the calamari or the squid, if you will, the shrimp. It's all just gorgeous.
So, let's try it with the wine. I did grab one of those shrimps out there because they're perfectly cooked. So, first one, Cornerstone Cellar Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay, and we're gonna need some Ferks.
Yep, got them.
Beautiful.
That I did. So what I like to do first when I'm doing a little taste test is take the wine first, take a little
Sure.
sip,
Excuse me.
kind of enjoy that for a minute, that nice lush looking fruit. It's got that beautiful bright acidity,
Mm-hmm.
smells lovely, and then take a taste of the food. You know, it's interesting, this recipe doesn't call for salt or pepper at all.
The only seasoning is the saffron, that's it.
Mm-hmm. And, well, I'm messy here. But the chorizo has a lot of flavor, a lot of spice. It's not hot, but it's spicy.
Mm-hmm.
And it has salt in it. You can taste the salt and the pepper and the seasonings in it. And because you sauteed the calamari in the juice from the chorizo, that flavor.
And if you're a spice fan and you want to add more spice to this dish,
You could throw in.
you could put in smoked paprika. I mean, that's very Spanish, you know. And so there's all sorts of different things you can do this. That's delicious.
With the Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, and you know that particular bite was mostly sausage, and that would have gone okay with Pinot Noir. But then you go to the next bite, and suddenly it's seafood, and you're like, whoa, that won't work. But that was delicious.
And I was thinking Merlot as well would work with the chorizo, and if you had mushrooms.
Especially if you did mushrooms and meat and no seafood, yeah.
I'm gonna get a mussel.
Cool.
Digging in. I could just use another mussel shell.
I'm gonna have a little chicken.
Nice and hot.
And the rice is nice and tender. Well, that's the other thing. When you're done with this, after the 8 to 10 minutes, at that point you want to test the rice to make sure it's done. And you may want to do that right before you start putting the seafood in, because you do that after the rice is cooked. And right before you put the seafood in, you may want to test the rice to make sure it's fully cooked, because you don't want to overcook the seafood. And if the rice still needs a few minutes, toss it back in and tap your feet.
And tap your feet. All right, I'm looking for a little calamari in there.
But the few times that we made this, the timing on this is really well. All great respect to the chef who created this recipe, because the rice was perfect every time, and then we were able to just add the seafood. After 8 or 10 minutes, it was done. All you're waiting for is the shrimp to turn opaque and the mussels to open up. And as soon as that happens, go for it.
Yeah.
Don't let it stay in there too long after the mussels open up, because then the mussels will dry up.
That's correct, and you don't want that. And these are little mussels. These won't take as long. And you can use clams. You can, and they're bigger. They take a little longer.
And you garnish it with lemon if you want to. You can also squeeze lemon on it if you like a little more juice, a little more citrus.
All right, I took a sip of the Rosé of Pinot Noir. Bright, luscious,
I bet.
but it's got this nice crisp acidity. It still has a little citrus fruit in it.
Those shrimp are delicious. That's the fun thing about paella, is every bite has another flavor, a different flavor, a little surprise. Oh, there's that in there. Oh, there's sausage. Oh my gosh, there's calamari. Oh yeah, there's some mussels.
The saffron is really nice. It's subtle, but it's there.
And if you like a lot of saffron, by all means, toss some more in.
You can put more in.
You can double it, whatever you want to do, but be careful, because saffron can go bitter on you.
And you don't need to use a lot, and it is a little pricey.
And if you don't like saffron, leave it out.
Wait a minute. Saffron's delightful.
Oh, it is. We don't leave it out, but you
So
can.
I think that both of these wines pair really well with this dish. With the shrimp, the calamari.
It's a versatile dish, and it's perfectly named. It is a wine party paella.
It is a wine party. So, Mary Beth Shannon, thank you. Thank you for sending this recipe. Thank you for letting us make it and show it. And we're going to have your recipe posted. And then also Ron Benny, thank you for the lamb chops. They were delightful. And we started out with our platinum winner, our best of show, if you will, Kim McGinnis. So she's got the wild mushroom lasagna.
And all the prices have been mailed out.
The prizes have been mailed out. Well, no, that's not. We found out 2 of our people are local.
Oh.
So they're gonna come in and we threw a little extra goodie in the goodie bag, and so they'll come in and do their complimentary tasting for $4.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and coming into the tasting room, we got a little gifty bag. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who submitted a recipe. It was super fun going through them,
It was great to cook all of them, and we kept eating.
testing them, and there were a couple, I have to admit, there were a couple that we didn't test because they were delicious looking recipes, but they were not wine friendly. They were great recipes, and we'll probably end up posting them anyway, but there's not a wine, you know, there's a chocolate torte in there, and there were lemon bars in there, which people know that we love lemon bars, but you know, it's difficult when it's sweet. So
No.
thank you for all of the recipes, and thanks for joining us today. This has been very fun.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's been a paella party.
it's been a paella party. So I think the next time you see us, I think we're going to be out in the vineyard. There's a lot going on out in the vineyard right now. We've got little clusters out there. Everything's leafed out. We're probably not that far away from bloom, from flowering. So there's a lot going on. So I think that we're going to be out in the vineyard, possibly out in the Farina vineyard, checking on the Sauvignon Blanc, because it's one of our first grapes to come in to make wine. So the Sauvignon Blanc will be one of the first ones in.
And we just did 3 cooking shows in a row because we had 3 winners. But now you're going to get the chance to see Kari out in the vineyard and maybe in the winery. And we'll be back to the old format of just doing 1 cooking show a week. But this 3 in a row is kind of like the old days when we did them every week.
We were doing them every week. Yeah, I think we'll go back we'll go back to 3rd Thursday. That's probably what we're going to do. Yeah, but in the meantime, we'll be out in the vineyard because there is a lot happening, and the sun is out, and the vines are happy. And
the vineyards are exploding. They're blooming, literally blooming.
So thank you for joining us. I appreciate that you follow us. I see you guys, and my arms aren't long enough to actually look and take a look at your comments until after we're done, because we are live and we still don't have production people.
Yeah, and they're way far away, and I can't see that far.
Way far away. I can't see that far. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week, whether it's in the kitchen or in the vineyard.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, production person.
Oh, yes. I am so versatile.
Oh my God, you're so amazing versatile. They can't wait to have more of this. Thank you again for joining us. Cheers.
Say goodbye, Dorothy.
Yeah. Bye, Dorothy.